Today are from Matthew, chapter 13, 31 through 33, and 44 through 52. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until it was all leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets, but threw out the bad. So will it be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous, and throw them into the furnace of fire, where they will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all this? He asked. They answered yes. And he said to them, therefore every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household who brings out his treasures, what is old and what is new.
Thank you, Kevin. So we prefer the obvious. We like to be sure, but faith is something else indeed. Hebrews 11:1 reminds us that faith is the conviction of things not seen, like a treasure hidden in a field, or like yeast mixed in flour, hidden and mixed in. That's how grace works. So how do we find it? And how do we celebrate it? By telling the stories, by pointing it out. Glory sightings, some call them. Sharing with the whole body the moments of joy and grace that we experience day by day. Often our prayer time is one of petitions, requesting more of the Spirit in our lives or the lives of those who we love, or the world as a whole. This is an important and necessary part of our ongoing prayer life, to be sure. But we can also give thanks and praise for all that has and is happening in our lives of faith. When we gather, it can be a time of celebration, as well as a time to grieve together and ask one another, how do we share our faith? One way we have is to cultivate our attention to the hidden aspects of faith is to sing about it. What songs can we sing, such as there is a flower in the bud, or sun behind the cloud? What stories can we tell alongside the stories of treasures in the field and yeast in the dough? How do we help people learn to recognize the Spirit at work in their lives? This may be something that goes beyond just our worship experience, but seeds can be planted and the intention established that as we gather together each week. Our gospel text this week is also about what is hidden in plain sight. But what Jesus claims is right under our nose is something of incalculable value. There was a rabbinic teaching method called charaz, and it means stringing pearls. And the teacher would spin out image after image, wisdom saying after wisdom saying, parable after parable, in a seemingly random way. It was designed to tell the larger truth by focusing on small details, or to talk about the whole by examining the parts. It was describing a picture by telling a variety of perspectives. I am sure as they heard this passage The hearers got frustrated by this style of teaching as we do. Which is it, Jesus? Had to be the demand. Is the kingdom like a pearl or a net? Is it more like yeast or like treasure in a field? Do we stumble across it or set out with a checklist to find it? Does it work in secret, hidden away from our eyes like yeast in the dough? Or does it sprout up like a plant and provide shade and protection like a mustard shrub? Is it something common like a seed, or questionable like yeast, or valuable like a treasure? All of these questions and more Jesus would answer with a smile and a nod of the head, and tell us that we are like the scribes, bringing out of the treasure something old and something new. And with furrowed brows, we would throw up our hands and grumble. When we pressed him and shouted out, "Which is it, this or that?" he would say, "Yes." You know he would with a laugh. He would say, "Yes, that's it, exactly." And he wasn't saying it to be funny. He'd say it because it was the truth. He'd say it because it was the best answer. Is it a pearl or a net or a seed or a treasure hidden in a field or a yeast hidden in 3 measures of flour? Yes, that is it exactly, and more. Talking to Jesus can be exhausting. You think he's out there to confuse us sometimes. We keep skipping over those verses where it says he said nothing except in parables. I think we skip them because they make it sound like Jesus was just messing around with us, and we don't like that. But the truth is, he really wants us to see. He really wants us to understand. We just can't do it by thinking the way that we usually think. We have to learn to look under our noses and off to the horizon at the same time. We have to learn to see the ordinary and the spectacular all together. We have to learn to experience the everyday and the once in a lifetime in the same moment. We need to see deeper and trust more completely. We need to value what the world throws away and throw away what the world thinks most valuable. In short, Jesus asks us to turn everything upside down, to stretch and reach, and to get outside of ourselves long enough to really see the wonder of the universe in a tiny seed. But most importantly, at least it seems to me to be the most important, that we should do it with joy. It's easy to get frustrated when you can't solve an unsolvable problem. But it is precisely these inclinations that we need to set aside. Instead, we are to embrace the challenge, the search, the discovery with joy and with passion. It is the latter parables in this string of pearls that carry the emotional piece. The first were simply descriptions, reminders that there are forces at work in this world, and though it may seem at times as though God is distant and apart from us, God is in fact at work within us and around us, and in the most unsuspected of people and places. There are seeds pushing down roots, Jesus said. There is yeast raising the bread of human relationships and opportunities. Trust me, he says, it is there. But then, as he gets wound up in telling, he gives us clues about how we are to respond to this, how we are to commit ourselves to the search and claiming. In his joy, Jesus says about the man who finds the treasure, and the merchant sells everything else to possess a new pearl. He sets aside everything he once thought important in order to occupy this new and exciting land. It is a choice, Jesus says, for joy or for nothing. Our invitation is to find the treasure in the midst of the ordinary. We can look for glimpses of the kingdom alongside or even within the mundane, everyday struggles of living life in a complicated and sometimes broken world. God brings hope even in admittedly messy situations. What seems inordinately muddled by human failing is ultimately redeemed by God's presence, which is often hidden and mixed into the ordinary stuff of life. So I ask you this week, as you enter into a new week, be on the lookout for places where you see God bursting through. And will you consider sharing those things next week when I ask you, do we have any praises? So may our week be filled with sightings of God, lots and lots of glory sightings. Amen.